Hi, this is our presentation on domestication and loss of survival strategies in animals by
Allison,
Karen.
Mashal.
Reina.
And Leanna.
So, domestication is a process where active selection by humans changes the phenotype of animals. Traits favored by humans are selectively promoted, such as reproductive output and body size. While this process has economic benefits, it can also lead to unintended consequences on other systems, including sensory and cognitive functions. In chickens, one of the most important systems to examine is vision, since it plays such a critical role in survival, reproduction, and interaction with the environment. The white leghorn chicken, that has been bred extensively for high egg production and minimal consumption of food, is drastically different from its wild ancestor, the red jungle fowl. In this study, scientists compared the visual systems of the domesticated and the wild ancestral chicken to assess how domestication has shaped eye structure, pupil dynamics, and optical sensitivity. By doing so, we gain a greater insight on the trade-offs of human-driven selection, as well as the evolutionary impacts that domestication can have on the animal's sensory systems.
Okay, so moving into some relevant examples and methods, we have the study by Rothenlin in 2013, which looked at how domestication affects a chicken's visual system. So to do this, they compared domesticated white leghorns, which have been selectively bred for egg production, with red junglefowl, which represented a wild ancestor. And to study the anatomy, they froze the heads and cryo-sectioned the eyes so they could measure key dimensions like lens thickness and axial length, and they did this using image J. So the image on the slide here shows an example cross-section of the chicken eye with the main structures labeled. And they also examined pupil dynamics by exposing the birds to 7 different light levels and filming their pupil responses with an infrared camera. And finally, they calculated optimal sensitivity, or F numbers, which essentially measure how efficiently the eye gathers light. And so altogether, this design allowed them to link domestication to changes in both the structure and function of the chicken eye.
Okay, our next study is by Perry and colleagues from 2021, and it looks at how domestication affects eye size in Atlantic salmon. So what they did was they compared domesticated, wild, and hybrid salmon using what's called a common garden experiment, basically raising all the fish in similar environments across Norway and Ireland, including freshwater, saltwater, farm tanks, and rivers. And to collect data, they took over 3,900 digital photos to measure eye and body size and also gathered tissue samples to figure out the genetic makeup of each fish. And what they found is that domestic salmon tend to have smaller eyes than wild ones, probably because they don't rely on vision as much in captivity. So it's a great example of how even small traits can change through the process of domestication.
Okay, so this study highlights how optical sensitivity in white leghorns have been altered by anthropogenic activity and how selective breeding has changed how their eyes function. This points to a broader issue of when we breed animals for specific traits such as higher egg production, there might be unintended trade-offs that negatively affect other areas like sensory systems. Currently, there is no detailed comparative descriptions between white leghorns and their wild ancestor, the red junglefowl, which limits our understanding of how domestication shaped vision. The authors also stress the need for morphological studies on the retina to discover structural differences as well as behavioral tests of visual function to see how these changes affects their perception and performance. So this study underscores that human-driven selection doesn't just affect productivity, it can also ripple into biological systems, raising important questions on animal welfare.
I am now going to shift to some future directions for research on how domestication can influence animal survival strategies. One key question is, does domestication actually reduce problem solving or cognitive flexibility in animals? And another is whether domesticated animals can relearn lost survival behaviors if reintroduced to the wild, or are those changes rooted in genetics and irreversible? To explore this, new tools are emerging. Genome sequencing is letting us compare
wild and domesticated DNA, while brain imaging methods such as fMRI and PET scans reveal how domestication alters neural circuits. On the behavioral side, AI can track animal movements and decision-making in great detail. These approaches don't just advance animal behavior research, they also inform conservation. Understanding how domestication reshapes survival traits can help guide reintroduction programs and protect biodiversity. Thank you.